Is it recording? Yeah.
Testing?
Testing, collapsing. Oh, door's open. Door sync.
Finally heard back from my Eggman.
Did you? Okay.
And I think I was out of range.
Okay, let's try this. Hello. This is our first ever attempt at doing this, as you can tell by our makeshift backdrop, which hides our clothesline. So, recently, in the past few 2 days for school, I've been doing some studies on the basal ganglia, which is a group of subnautical nuclei situated at the base of your forebrain, so around this sort of area.
We're not demonstrating that on me.
Yeah. And in doing this, I sort of thought, hey, I wonder if other people do this, and for a while I've been thinking of doing some sort of talking, podcasty thing from when I had night chats with my brother, and Mum just said, let's just sit down and do it. So this is our first ever try at this.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is probably quite obvious.
so the subject is the basal ganglia. So with me I've got a few notes, and I'm actually just going to read it through and sort of explain. So it's a bit of an information session on the basal ganglia, what it does, and just sort of my thoughts on it and Mum's, and sort of just some of the things I theorised about how it would work. So, the basal ganglia, as I said earlier, it is a group of subcortical nuclei.
Made the same mistake!
I actually, on my note, you can see where I've done the N and turned it into a C. Subcortical nuclei situated at the base of the forebrain. Now, the basal ganglia is strongly connected with the cerebral cortex, thalamus, and brainstem, as well as several other brain areas. The basal ganglia are associated with various functions, including habit learning, eye movements, cognition, and emotion. But its primary function is likely to control and regulate activities of the motor and premotor cortical areas, so that voluntary movements can be performed smoothly. Experimental studies showed that the basal ganglia exerts an inhibitory influence on a number of motor systems, and that the release of this inhibitory influence permits a system to become active. The behavior switching that takes place with the basal ganglia and is influenced by signals from the brain and plays a key role in executive functions. So from there I was thinking, wow, this is a pretty big thing. I first thought the basal ganglia was something to do with your throat because it reminded me of the uvula. Uvula.
Like gangles.
Yeah, gangles. You know, the dingle dangles. But when I read that, I got quite intrigued by how it helps with emotions and your motor systems, and particularly the inhibitory influence it does to sort of stop all your motor systems from firing on once, so that one particular can. And particularly I was intrigued by executive functions. So I did some research on that. And I found that executive functions are a set of cognitive processes that are necessary for the cognitive control of behavior. Executive functions include basic cognitive processes such as attentional control, cognitive inhibition, and inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Now, if any of you are listening to this or watching, you might be a little bit confused by what some of those are. So I'm going to target on mainly the first three I said, which was attentional control, which is an individual's capacity to choose what they pay attention to and what they ignore. So it's, as Mum has clearly demonstrated, it's sort of how your brain decides what you want to focus on and what to ignore when there's so many things going around.
Particularly of interest for you, because you're learning to drive.
Yeah.
And that's a bombardment of information that you've got to filter.
So yeah, actually that would be a thing. Attentional control would be used a lot when you're driving because you're having to focus on the road, and if you're like us in a big family, sometimes shut out all the kids screaming in the background. I mean singing loudly.
That's right. Delivering beautiful messages.
A similar thing to that is cognitive inhibition, which similarly is the mind's ability to tune out stimuli that are irrelevant to the task or process at hand or the mind's current state. I said to Mum that Dad has a cognitive inhibition towards football. So my dad, when we watches football, he sits down and
Rugby league, buddy.
Rugby league. If any of you like AFL, then the channels, the doors over there. So he sits and he'll watch the football, and we'll be talking, and to him all that matters is the football. And you get your little signals, as you'll see on the TV, the little volley bar. It's your first signal that's a bit loud. But often things we say won't be picked up by him.
Yeah.
So we realise that is his cognitive inhibition working with attentional control. That he has decided that's my attention, and his cognitive inhibition has actually shut out all the other stimuli that would trigger, like, because, oh, my children are saying something, doesn't matter, the football.
Are they bleeding? Nope, that's alright.
Dad, I hurt my arm. Are you bleeding? The inhibitory control is the cognitive process that permits an individual to inhibit their impulses and natural, habitual, or dominant behavioral responses in order to select a more appropriate behavior that is consistent with the completing their goals.
Parenting 101 right
yeah,
there.
So anyone knows what it's like when you have a sibling and your first instinct is to go, shut up? But,
no! I don't want to!
And then your next instinct would be to probably hit. And inhibitory control is to stop your impulses and to actually think what better suits your goal. And being homeschooled, I sort of thought of funny little scenarios where you can use these words and you can baffle people. So like, you know, you're running, or I'm a dancer, so you do dancing, and then someone's distracting you, just going, oh, sorry. My cognitive thinking right now is just, my attentional control set the goal of my dancing, and cognitive inhibition, you are not in my stimuli, so I'm ignoring you. And then people go, you're being rude. I'd go, no, I'm just, unfortunately, my brain has not seen you as a stimulus to reaching the goal that is completing this dance right now, so I'm inhibiting the stimuli, which is to talk to you.
Yeah.
And then if they were to go like, oh, you're making this up. Oh, no. You see, now I'm actually using my inhibitory control. Because my first instinct is to go, you're dumb and stupid. But I'm actually stopping right now and thinking, that does not suit my goal, because we're dancers and we need to work as a team. So I'm actually stopping and actually explaining to you how my basal ganglia in my brain is working all these things out. And my inhibitory control is stopping my natural responses that I can think of a way to say more humbly towards you, pun intended, that, no.
Or move.
Yeah, move.
And meanwhile, half your class is gone. So I think that's why we don't communicate in those terms.
Higher order executive functions also require the simultaneous use of multiple basic executive functions, so like using multiples of what I just said, and involve planning, fluid intelligence, which is reasoning and problem solving. It's
not swimming and having good thoughts?
No.
Okay.
So if anyone, and like I did, thought, wow, that's a lot of information of attentional control, cognitive inhibition, and inhibitory control, you just got to remember that's the basics, and your brain or basal ganglia has to trigger multiples of those, and those are only 3 of them, at the same time, just to do problem solving.
Yeah.
If you thought algebra was hard now, just think of what your brain's going through.
Yeah.
And on that, I didn't write it down, but I've got written up here on how some psychologists outlined 5 types of situations in your routine activation of behavior would not be sufficient for optimal performances, i.e. where your basal ganglia would trigger. I swear I had more notes on those, but okay. Improv. Turns out I don't have all my notes. So, here. The notes on the computer. The executive system is thought to be heavily involved in handling novel situations outside the domain of your automatic psychological processes.
Wow.
That can be explained by the reproduction of learned schemas or set behavior.
Uh-huh.
So it's your executive functions are normally used for triggering things that your automatic responses might not work in. And often those can come from set schemas and set behaviors. So often your culture, what you learned in, helps influence that, which is why different races, Asian, a Chinese, a Samoan, and an English person, a Brit, all walk into a bar. Luckily they duck. They would all have different ways of automatic thinkings and automatic behaviours due to their set behaviours. So the Samoan would probably naturally be more willing to share his food because where he's from, it's common for you to share around your food and what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. In the British, he might have a bit more of a...
Unless it's the last corned beef.
Unless it's the last corned beef. The Brit might have a more colonial style of, no, that's mine, I buy that, and that's mine, well...
It's unsafe practice
to share your food. You could be sick while I'm super healthy and I don't want to get sick with your diseases.
That's right. Get a straw.
And the Chinese might have a theory of, hey, let's all pool our money and buy more.
Yeah, that's it. Let's buy a bar.
Yeah, let's buy the bar by pooling our money, and then one by one we'll all buy each other a bar. So they all have different set behaviours, and your executive functions will trigger to see what the set goal would actually be.
Side note, check out that awesome wattle bird.
Oh, nice.
Sitting promptly right at the front.
This is our first
at the forefront of the
We've
tree.
got an audience.
The blackbird over the
And so these psychologists have put together about 5 areas where your executive functions or executive system will kick in to help trigger what your automatic responses might not help with. So that will involve planning or decision making, so planning ahead or making decisions. Especially if you're in a group scenario, you will have to think for everyone else who has different set behaviours or learned schemas. Those that involve error correction or troubleshooting, similar to planning. Situations where responses are not well rehearsed or contain novel sequences of action. Improvisation. So I'd say stand-up comedians are very good at that part.
Extremely so.
Dangerous or technically...
TV hosts.
True.
To a point.
Dangerous or technically difficult situations, so life and death, where you're like, my brain normally says not to, eat a grub because it's disgusting. But your executive function goes, but I saw this guy on TV eat that and live, so...
And there's nothing else to eat.
Yeah.
Interesting. Imagine how adjusted the concepts that we're talking about, or how refined these brain functions are for someone who does extreme training like SES or Marine Corps and things like.
They probably have a set, and my sort of theory is because it says like the basal ganglia helps with habit learning and connected to executive functions, I sort of say you can link those two together as your executive functions actually override your automatic behaviours until they become habitual.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, in the term of an SES, maybe the first trainings is actually teaching them how to shut off their automatic learnings so that what we would consider an executive function of, oh wow, I'm really overriding my systems, is situational.
I need to sleep. Yeah.
I also like to think maybe adrenaline has something to do. So people who enjoy the adrenaline, it maybe fires off different. That would be an interesting thing.
Whether they go through training to increase their dopamine levels.
Dopamine levels and adrenaline to help them think more clear.
I think are prone to the extreme circumstances.
And the 5th situation was a situation that requires overcoming of a strong habitual response or resisting temptation. So the common one is...
that was a nice habitual response.
Yes. A bit of sweat looking and I'm sure a lot of females go through this, is you get a lovely piece of chocolate. You're just like, your mouth starts watering, and your natural response would be to take a bite, because it is a potentially rewarding stimulus.
Yeah.
But say you're on a diet, and in that diet you actually can't have chocolate, or you've made the decision not to have chocolate, then your habitual
Tough gig.
or your set behavior comes into direct conflict with an internal goal. In that case, your executive function will fire off and actually inhibit your natural response to take a bite, so that you can continue towards that goal. And to that sort of thought, I was thinking on the thing of Christians or any sort of religious thing, but we're born and raised Christian, mum's Christian, our whole family is, so that's where it sort of clicks automatically for me. I was thinking, gee, I wonder what the difference would be, because if you've read the Bible, you know, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, shalt not commit adultery. Envy, 10 Commandments sort of thing. There's a lot of resisting of temptation. And my thoughts went to, I base it around the symbol of the superannuation funds, two guys, same age, same income,
Australian super fund.
but the difference, the difference, this man has been a Christian for 30 years his whole life. Well, the guy to the left has only been a Christian for 2 years. Now, they're both presented with the same temptation. So, in this case, we'll say it's a girl, or because they're both men. The difference is the man who has only just became Christian, or has been a Christian for 5 or so years, has before fell to the temptation outside of Christianity to just go, yeah, let's go. Let's,
get it on.
Yeah. But for the guy who's been a Christian his whole life, he's always been around other people of Christian belief, so he's never really had to deal with that temptation, but this is his first time facing that temptation. My thoughts went to the executive functions. Whose works harder, or whose triggers more? Because on the face level, the guy who's been the Christian the whole year, you could say it's not a habitual response, because he's never gone further. He's never had to deny it, or deny his impulse isn't to do that, because he knows what he's trained and what he believes, and that's habit for him. But if he's never faced it, is that temptation, or is that maybe a different scenario?
Well, it's
you
novel.
Could say, is it novel? Is it a novel scenario? But the guy...
It depends on his Christian upbringing, isn't it? And if it was wise and grounded, then there'd be scenarios painted for him without necessarily dangling him in. He's a hot oil. This is what it feels like. Ding, that's what it feels like.
Well, the guy who, this is his 10th, 20th time doing this, but the difference is the 19 times he wasn't Christian, but this time he does, and he knows what it says.
And the revelation of who Christ is makes such a big difference and supersedes so much of all of what we're talking about.
Yeah, true.
But I hear you, son. Good thoughts. So,
for example, would his executive functions have to trigger more inhibitory, that because he actually is having to inhibit his natural response? And as I was thinking, I was like, there are actually different scenarios. So maybe for him, while it's resisting temptation, for the guy who's always been a Christian, it's just decision making. And then, I thought, what would it be a basic? Is it a basic executive function or a higher? And I sort of concluded maybe the guy who has always been a Christian is actually not as hard for him. So it's more of a basic executive, he's just using his cognitive inhibition, the stimulus just doesn't trigger. Or attentional control, he just weighs up
generalising
the attention of his goal,
Yeah.
and just goes, that doesn't add up.
It's not a religious mindset. He's actually got
Yeah.
a true sense of who Christ is
Yeah.
in him, and he's grown
Yeah,
in that.
and
that
he's
he
not
is.
going. Yeah, it's just a part of him. It's not like religious thinking of what's the Bible say. What's the Bible say? It's
Yeah.
like he knows who he is in Christ.
Yeah, so it's
And-
a higher functioning on
yeah.
so many levels.
So, and then perhaps the guy who it's his first time is actually using a higher executive function in his brain to actually have to put multiples together because he's having to stop his natural response. So he's using inhibitory control, cognitive inhibition, attentional control. He's using all of those at the same time to weigh up his goals and to also line that up with resisting natural impulses to sort of actually deny. And in the story they both deny and they both walk happily, and then
celebrate that, or
and the thing of maybe
live a less complex life, maybe.
if they walk, like, it's an interesting thing to sort of think on, and like other things where is how the executive functions work, and all this was really from just 2 days of reading and 6, 7, 8 papers of notes, and I was just saying it out loud and I was thinking on these things, and ultimately, as I said, this idea came from me just connecting up with that idea of thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to just record